We are live for another Founder Wisdom podcast with Abbe Feder. Abbe is founder at InCircle Fertility. She helps women navigate their fertility journey with compassionate support and expert guidance. This podcast is brought to you by podbuyer.com. If you want to start your own podcast, monetize it, go to podbuyer.com. We have a free ebook and a masterclass teaching you how to monetize your podcast with AI, AdSense money, sponsor money, and lead generation money. We teach you how to do that. Abbe, welcome to the podcast. Tell me a bit more about yourself and what you're up to
Thank you.
nowadays.
Thank you. It's Abby. I know my parents spelled it weird, but I say it Abby.
Abby.
Yes, I am the founder of InCircle Fertility. Went through my own insane fertility journey for about 6 years. Went through loss, ectopic pregnancy, termination for medical reasons, all the things. And when I emerged on the other side, it felt like I was born to help other people go through it. And so that's what I'm doing now. I created InCircle Fertility, where we coach people going through infertility. We teach them about infertility, what to expect, how to pick their doctor, how to navigate the relationships, all of the above.
Love that. So me and my wife are currently conceiving, so this is very relevant here. So
Good.
what happened with your own journey? And I mean, 6 years, that is a very long marathon. What happened on the mindset side of things there? Did you give up at some point?
There were parts of times when I gave up. I think my gut feeling was always, this isn't the end of my story. This isn't the end of my story. And that propelled me to keep going most of the time. But there were times when, and this is what I would say to a client, like, I literally just couldn't do more treatment. I couldn't handle it. And so I just gave myself the time and energy and permission to take the break because that would fuel me again to then start treatment again. Um, I don't really know what happened. We never had a diagnosis of any kind, which you think, great, nothing's wrong. But at the same time, when you're going through it, we had what's called unexplained infertility. So nothing to treat, fix, do to change things, but just wait it out. And I can say that very calmly now because I'm on the other side of it. But when I was in the midst of waiting it out, I was miserable and wanted to punch everyone and everything and hated everybody, often my husband, sometimes my doctor. And that's just the experience when you're going through the treatment.
6 years of that is incredible. So what was your reaction when it actually happened?
I literally didn't believe it until my children pretty much came into the world. I kept
Okay.
thinking I was very pregnant. I had a very uneventful pregnancy. I have twins now, so I thought I was going to be high risk and it was never really going to happen, and I was going to be in the NICU with them for weeks, and I had a very uneventful pregnancy. I didn't believe they were actually coming until they were here. It felt very surreal. And so tell me what you just asked because now I got caught up in my pregnancy.
Yeah, the events, actual the delivery,
Of
the
the
day that
delivery.
they came out and you had the baby in your arm, or babies, I think you just said
Y-
twins.
Yes. The actual birth story is a little crazy. I will spare your audience that story and I will spare you and your wife that story because you're trying to conceive. But one day when you're done family building, call me and I'll tell you that story. Um, yeah, no. Oh, you said what did you do or feel when you got the call that you were actually pregnant?
No,
So,
or delivered, yeah, or
or
I mean,
delivered. Yeah. It's the whole 9 months. I was very anxious. I couldn't really enjoy the pregnancy. And I was just hopeful that this was actually really going to work. I know it seems crazy, but I was thinking, okay, if two are in there, I should be able to end up with one no matter what, right? Like it's a crazy mind game you play with yourself, but I felt like the other was an insurance policy, and I'm very lucky they both arrived happy and healthy, and they're my children now. Thank God.
wow, yeah, what a journey, 6 years. Because I've heard about like 1 year, 2 years. Do you feel that your life is much different nowadays with kids? How has your your life view, your perception of life has changed since you had these twins?
Oh, so different. I mean, I'm a different person. I think it was very hard for me after I gave birth to identify as a mother because I had been in the infertility space for so long. I was always the infertile friend. It was like a huge part of my life, my struggle. It took up a
Hmm.
lot of my heart space and a lot of my head space. and then I had to release all that and take care of 2 humans, and it was very weird and different, and it took me a really long time to grow into the identity of being a mother. A lot of people would say to me along the way, "Oh, well, when you have your children, you'll forget all about the journey and how hard it was." And no, I don't forget. It really imprinted my life. Of course, I don't feel the pain in the way that I did when I was going through it. And then also, I feel sometimes there's guilt. Like, I know people who are still going through it and or go through it and don't end up with what we would consider the happy ending of having the children. And, being now in the infertility space, I meet all kinds of people with all kinds of stories. Um, and we don't think that this is ever going to be something that's hard. We're trained to believe it's going to happen in an instant, and we have to be so careful. And so much of my life was devoted to that reality that that's not the case. And so helping other people understand that along the way feels very aligned.
Yeah, do you feel that people should share more their pregnancy stories? And if so, what would be the medium? Should someone start I don't know, an app, a community about this?
Yeah, there are a bunch out there. When I was going through it, there were hardly any, but I think so many women and couples have gone through it now. And they've all said, there has to be a better way to do this. There has to be more of a community while going through this. And so some of those apps are created. Certainly, I'm involved in several communities out there where some of them are more like sorority based, where it's a bunch of women going through it who just want to show up for each other and cheer each other on. And some of them are much more mental health based. But we're very lucky now that the women who have gone through it have really been trailblazers in terms of setting up these communities and safe spaces to talk about this for people to understand the realities of what might happen.
So, other women that are going through these similar journeys, how do you specifically help them? Is the goal pregnancy? Is that 80% of the goal, and then 20% is to make them mentally safe? Like, what is your main field of expertise and where you add value as a fertility coach?
Yeah, great question. I would say almost the opposite. I mean, of course, the whole goal is to get them pregnant and have a safe live birth, but so much of it is just the mindset along the way. If you think about like midwives, doulas, those were not normally part of the birthing process, right? But so many women went through it and were like, I need help, I need guidance, I need coaching through this process. And so now we've normalized in a lot of ways a birthing coach, a doula, and our midwife essentially what I do, but while you're going through infertility. So sometimes it's, walking somebody through their sister who told them that they would be willing to carry their baby for them. And you think, wow, that's so kind. They're willing to be their surrogate. But like when you're going through infertility, that hurts to hear. So it's navigating the emotional piece when you get those phone calls, or sometimes your doctor didn't do what they said they were going to do. So how do you respond? It's really a lot of each client is very different. And I also take it client by client. Some need more logistical support and some need more emotional handholding. It really depends on what they've been through and what their personality is. Some of them need, like, I'm definitely not a therapist and I'm not a relationship expert, but I will sometimes talk to the couples together if they're just not on the same page in terms of what the next step of treatment is. We can weigh out what are the options. Do we care more about the outcome or the time it's going to take? Do we care more about our mental health while we're going through this, or just getting it over with quickly, right? Like reprioritizing what the main focus might be.
That's so interesting. You're opening so many doors here. That getting sister pregnant one, never ever thought of that.
Yeah.
So how should we visualize the process if we're like currently conceiving? What should be the mindset? Is it patience coupled with science, conversations about the future of our children's, right? And how is that dialogue changing once we get pregnant?
I wish that every couple had a dialogue about, we often talk when we're dating about how many kids we want, right? Like, or when we're maybe talking about getting married or long-term partnership. Oh my God, you want 2 kids? I want 2 kids. Everything's perfect. I wish we were having the conversation about like, what are you willing to go through if we don't get pregnant on our own? Because a lot of times what I find is the couple starts their marriage or their long-term partnership commitment, whatever it is, and one partner realizes that the other one's not willing to do IVF treatment, or, isn't willing to spend money on something that they feel they shouldn't have to spend money on. So I think if we can start having those conversations earlier in relationships, it'll save so much heartache later on. Some women come into a relationship, or men, and know they have an issue of some kind. They know they have, let's say, endometriosis or PCOS, and they've been told potentially by a doctor that it's going to be a little bit more challenging. And that just sets the expectation in such a different way than a couple who starts their marriage and decides, okay, on July 1st, we're going to start trying. And 2 weeks goes by and you get a negative test and you're like, what do you mean it's negative, right? Your whole world is shattered because you've been told your whole life that the minute you decide you want it, it's going to happen. So I think really tempering expectation levels when you're trying to conceive, and knowing that it is so common. I mean, 67% of first rounds of IVF fail. So that's the other thing. It's like you finally get to this point where you're willing to try IVF and it doesn't work. Like, my mind was blown. I thought once you get to IVF, you get the baby. That's the guarantee, right? But that's not the case. And so just knowing the possibilities with your partner really helps, because you always, you commit to for better or for worse, but sometimes you don't know what for worse is really going to look like until you're in the depths of this sort of heartache. And, oftentimes I see the woman is like, I'll do anything, I'll give everything. And the man is much more, well, let's just keep waiting and let's just keep trying and it's going to happen. Those are huge generalizations, but that, I would say, on average is the norm. And you don't know you're going to get into that situation when you start dating somebody, right? That you're really going to be like in that foxhole with them. And so having these hard conversations before you're in crisis mode, I think, is the best way to approach it.
Right. I can identify myself a lot to everything you just
Mm.
said. So I don't consider myself in a foxhole. I'm so patient about it, right? Like, if it takes 6 years, I'll take 6 years. I mean, that's the reality of it. I'm also super bullish on pretty much every technology and biotech that's out there as a tech guy myself. So pretty patient about the whole thing. Also open to adopting, right? Like, there's so many humans on this planet Earth. And
Yes.
I do believe that even if they don't come from my genes, I believe in epigenetics quite a lot. So
Yes.
modify that little brain and guide them on the right path. Because I think there's a lot of parents out there that are throwing little demons in this world, and that needs to change the whole education system, which is a whole other parenthesis. So, okay. Preconception, then conceive. I guess managing the expectations as well. Like, even if you are pregnant, we might have a miscarriage of some kind. What is the equilibrium between preparing for that event, that chaotic and dramatic event, and actually thinking positively and, okay, this is going to happen?
Yeah, it's a great question and something I deal with a lot with my clients. I want everybody to think as positively as they can. What's the sense in your life in going through with negative thoughts? But thinking positive or not thinking positive is not going to make your pregnancy stay or not stay. And I think the sooner you can take that pressure off yourself, the better you are. 1 in 4, as of this moment, 1 in 4 pregnancies end in miscarriage. That's a huge number. And that's of known pregnancies, right? There's people who didn't even know they were pregnant and might lose it and might not even know what was going on. So you don't want to go in expecting the worst. But even if you do, it's not going to make you miscarry your baby. Nothing that you do or think or say, no positive thought, is going to decide. Think about how many people don't want to get pregnant and do it, right? If that was the thing that determined what keeps a pregnancy, then we would just say, oh, I don't want this one, it's gone. Oh, I do want this one, it's here. It doesn't work that way. So I don't want you to go through being pessimistic. I want you to remain hopeful. But if you're scared and if you're anxious, it's okay and it's normal and it's not going to cause you to lose the pregnancy.
Love that. Why is the miscarriage rate so elevated? Has that changed historically over time? Is it because of our diets, the stress nowadays, or has it always been that way?
You know, yes, and both. People are getting pregnant later than they used to. I remember my grandmother, who's still alive and she's 97. She had a miscarriage, and she has 3 children and had 1 miscarriage. So that means 1 in 4 pregnancies for her was a loss. And nobody in her generation talked about it. And so part of it, I think, is that people had a lot of shame about it. And so statistics weren't as accurate as they are now. Things weren't being as reported as they are now. And also in the olden days, and I don't even mean, my grandma's 97. I don't mean that long ago, but even more recently, you couldn't find out so quickly that you were pregnant. Right now, we have this amazing technology where you can find out within like 4 days, even sooner sometimes, that you're pregnant. So a lot of people didn't know they were pregnant, didn't know they were having a loss, which is why even that 1 in 4 number, it might be even bigger than that. And I think, look, there are environmental factors. It's horrible to think about. Um, I have a podcast, and my guest today, her episode aired, said that when you ate an orange in our grandparents' generation, it took one orange to get X amount of vitamin C. And this generation, it takes 8 oranges to get the same amount of vitamin C. Our nutrients are depleted, the environmental toxins are real. And so supplementation is one way to really bump up your body and get yourself ready for pregnancy. It's one of several ways. And look, there's no guarantee that it's going to work, but why wouldn't you put yourself in the best possible situation? Keep your mitochondrial health as quality as you can. Keep your antioxidants up so that your egg quality and sperm quality, because sperm does represent half the equation here, right? We put so many women on so many prenatals and vitamins. Like, men can take things too to up their sperm, to boost their sperm, to keep their mitochondrial health up. These are all ways to improve it. And I think planning ahead for that in a best case scenario in your relationship, arming yourself with all the nutrients, the supplements, the vitamins, all the things you need 3 to 6 months ahead of when you want to start trying is really good for your body. And if you can do it together, it makes you feel like you're in it together, like you're both contributing to the good outcome.
Love that. Let's talk about the mood swings for a moment. I'm a
Ugh.
calm guy, very rational oriented person. That also may annoy you hearing that right now. I'm conscious of
Yes,
that.
of course.
Um, how should I manage my wife's, and I mean, before my wife, what it was my mom, right? How should I deal with mood swings? And is it something I need to deal with? I'm
Oh,
not
that's
even sure
such
how to ask that question, but yeah, guide
Yeah,
me.
that's a
Help
lovely
me.
question. Look, you might not be able to do anything about it, would be my guess. Mood swing is a mood swing. If there's medication involved, hormones involved, she's gonna hate you for 5 minutes and she'll get over it, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Um, but I think validating her feelings in any moment is the best way to go about it, because we start to feel crazy. Even if you don't necessarily agree with it, just giving her some kind of validation in the moment so that she doesn't feel crazy, I think is a great way to deal with the mood swings. And I will say, like, some people have no reaction to hormone imbalance or to the drugs. Some people just don't. They're very lucky. Other people do. Other people can control it. So you might have heard, like, a fertility diet is like no gluten, no dairy, no sugar, right? And I'm not suggesting you do this. Like, please, after 6 years, what are you kidding? I was like, give me all the wine and pizza that I could possibly eat. Like, I need something, right? But I will say that on the times when I was eating cleaner and keeping gluten away and keeping my sugar down, the mood swings were much more balanced and much more level, because those things inflame your mood. And so if you're really like, some people are really affected by the hormones. If you really are, maybe try considering, an anti-inflammatory diet, because in addition to your body, it will keep your inflammation of your mood down as well. But from the male perspective and the partner's perspective, any kind of validation you can give during a mood swing, I think, is so appreciated and so helpful from the person going through it.
Yeah, I guess it's pain, it's bodily pain as well, especially during menstruation. So I
Mhm.
picture it as a big hangover, sort of. So I'm trying to have empathy for that. Your relationship, you've been quite open about it with Isaac. So
Yes.
what relationship tips do you have, generally speaking, that can fit into this modern age now that times are different?
Oh gosh, I think understanding that the person going through the treatment, pregnancy, hormones, like, generally the woman, the person who's going to be carrying, is just going to be more needy in those times, and the best case scenario is the partner's just going to understand that and support it. Look, communication is everything, but sometimes when we're in the throes of infertility or rage or hormone imbalance, like, our communication goes out the window. and I don't want to propagate that the woman is like verbally abusive towards her husband, but like there are some rage moments, and just keep in mind you guys are going through something very different, right? Like I remember one of my lowest points with Isaac was when I knew I was going to have a miscarriage and there was a big trip he was going to go on, and I wanted him to stay home and he wanted to still go on the trip. Now, in his head, he's like, well, you're going to miscarry anyway. It's not like staying here is going to make that go any differently. And you know, this trip is so important to me. And I was like, so you're going to let me sit home alone in bed and miscarry by myself, right? And of course, he did not go on the trip. He did the right thing and he stayed with me. But I was devastated and enraged. Like, how could you possibly? But this is the thing, like, we don't know what the depths of these situations are going to look like on our relationship. And so the more you can calmly, and I know it's easier said than done, but like calmly talk it out, the better you guys are going to fare through it.
Yeah, that scenario I can understand the both sides, but definitely Isaac made a good decision there. He wouldn't
Yeah,
have his head chopped off
exactly.
if he would have gone. Yeah, that's actually a thing with me and my wife, like, because we have 6 dogs right now. So
Oh
it's
my
like, okay,
gosh.
I need to find strategies so that when I'm traveling most of the time for business, I can find someone to take care of all of that. Not a dog hotel, right? We're not so much
Right.
for that. Okay, your business, if I hire you, what's your cost? What's the time commitment? And what should I expect?
Sure. So I have 3 different packages. 6 months is my signature package. The reason I do 6 months is because nothing in the fertility space happens quickly. Everything takes longer than you want it to. My goal is to really become an ally to you, to become a huge pillar in your story, in your journey. So I want to spend 6 months with you. I want to get to know your partner, get to know how you guys react to things. So that's like, I call it my signature glow package. It's 6 months, it's $3,200. I have various payment options, plans, etc. And you get 90 minutes of Zoom per month, which is at your discretion. You could do all 90 at once. You could do 6 15-minute sessions, and then unlimited text messaging, emailing back and forth on prepping for doctor's appointments. Like I said, you can text me and say, I want to punch my sister, all these different things. I'm available 24/7. I don't respond 24/7, but I'm available at any point because like therapy is amazing. But if your appointment's 4 o'clock on Thursday and you're having a crisis at 2 o'clock on Tuesday, I'm the person basically that you would call. Then I also have what's called like a mini glow package. So that's a 3-month version of the same package and it's $1,800. And then I have an annual package, which is $5,400 for the whole year. Hardly anybody ever signs up for that because nobody wants to think they're still going to be going through infertility in a year, which I understand. But there are cases where like I have somebody that's going to be choosing a surrogate or, right. So I know they're going to be making their own embryos for several months, then going through the process of the psychological evaluation for them and for the surrogate who might be carrying, whatever it might be, right? So if you know you're going to be on a long road like that, the 12-month is available because it's more cost effective that way. And I stick with you. I would say on average, my people are with me for a year, but they book 6 months at a time because they do the 6 months. They think they're going to be done. They realize they need 6 more months of support. They grab on to the other 6 months. Also, like pregnancy, as I was mentioning, after loss, after infertility, the anxiety of pregnancy is so strong. And so sometimes they'll book with me once they get their positive pregnancy test, just so that they know they have me on standby in case of something bad happening, in case they're freaking out, or just to calm the anxiety.
Yeah, that's also how I use my psychotherapist for
Yeah.
optimization and when I will be taking big risks in business, when shit will hit the fan, basically. Your podcasting journey, tell me a bit more about it. What's your podcasting strategy nowadays?
Yeah, my current podcast is called Women's Wellness with Abbe Feder. I actually got into this business because of a podcast. My husband Isaac and I made this podcast called Immaculate Conception. It was before the podcast revolution. There were no fertility podcasts out there. We felt insane. Nobody to talk to about it. So we just grabbed a recorder and started recording and put basically a documentary style podcast out about our journey. That did extremely well. People were reaching out to me from everywhere asking me for advice and referrals. And that's when I realized that there is this gap that needs to be filled. And that's how my business really started. Now, I love to tell other stories about infertility. So the majority of my stories are infertility related on my podcast, but they also include things like a reproductive urologist, like what defines male factor infertility. Today's episode is all about supplements. I want everybody to have access to the most valuable information out there to optimize their health and especially their reproductive health. So that's the lens that I go to with my podcast.
Last but not least, again, not on the business side and sort of random questions. You mentioned various time rage punching and anger. How does one manage that? Like first as the person that has anger management issues and the person that is sort of dealing with them in with that problem in the relationship, the other partner.
Sure. I believe strongly in letting the rage out. And there's different ways you can do that. It can be screaming, it can be calm. I think that grounding in nature is a really good way to get your rage under control. So put your feet in sand, put your feet in grass, go in the grass and scream if you need to, right? Like I used to keep a list literally called people I want to punch. And it just made me feel so much better to get it out and put it on a piece of paper. And I remember one time Isaac and I were at a restaurant and they had like crayons and paper on the table. And we made a giant together, like people we want to punch list. And we kept it and we kept adding to it and adding to it. And it would just make us feel better. It just got it out of our body and our head so that we can move on to the next thing and let the rage go. I hate exercising personally, but of course I do it because I am concerned with women's wellness. Exercise can be the key to everything. And you have to be careful sometimes if you're doing infertility treatment. There's certain things you can and can't do. But if you love running, like when that rage hits, get your sneakers on and go for a run. And then
Yeah.
lastly, I would just say, like, I believe I call it, I say it's like salt's cure. Salt in the form of a salt bath, crying, sweating, or ocean. Any one of those four things I think can help rage in any moment.
Interesting last one. And yet,
Yeah,
physical activity, my favorite would be kickboxing.
there you go.
Obviously, where can people find out more about you, Abby?
Yes, find me at InCircle Fertility. There it is in my little under my name, InCircle Fertility. I'm that on Instagram, my website. You can email me that way. And I love chatting with people. So please reach out if any of this resonates with you.
That was Abby